guys. You're watching Out of the Box podcast with Rosie Tran, or listening if you're on iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud. I'm really excited to be here today with a very special guest, Lou Perez. He is the author of the book That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore and a hilarious comedian who I've performed with. Lou, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you so much for setting this up, taking the time. I know we're on different coasts and we have different time zones going on and all that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on. So, you are a comedian. So, before we get into the book, tell us a little bit about your comedy journey. I know everyone has a different journey, how they got into this crazy stand-up comedy business. So, how did you get started?
Yeah, I had always wanted to do stand up, but I didn't get the nerve to do it until I was like I think 27 or 28. And so up until that point my journey in comedy was through improv and sketch comedy. So in New York, that was at NYU with a group called the Wicked Wicked Hammercats, and then over to the UCB Theater with the Hammercats, and then a my two-man duo, Greg and Lou.
So, was
And
stand-up your first love, though? Like, you wanted to do stand-up initially, but you were just too scared to go out on your own and do stand-up.
yeah, I think so. I think when I was younger, like I absolutely loved George Carlin and just had like, this, sort of fantasy of, I guess, one day, being able to get up there and do it. And I guess, yeah, I just kept putting it off and putting it off. I didn't have the guts to do it until like I said, like, I had like a few years of performing under my belt. And then I finally got up at the UCB used to have I think it was a once a month stand up night. It was kind of in like one of the late slots, and it was called Gut Bucket, and it was hosted. It was
Okay.
yeah, Gut Bucket, um, and it was hosted by Pete Holmes. Pete Holmes hosted it, and a number of guys like Kumail were there, and Matt McCarthy, and just kind of like a crew who went on to really big and successful things. They were at Gut Bucket. It was the first time that I'd ever gone up to do stand up, and I was uh, I was so nervous that I had the microphone in my hand and I was wrapping the cord like kind of around my arm, you know.
Okay.
So that could have been cool looking if I was like in a band, like I'm like in a band. I'm gripping the mic and like wrapping this around. And then at one point the sound went out and I
Probably because you
like,
were wrapping the cord.
yeah, but I didn't think so. I thought that they like cut my mic or something like that. So I sort of made an offhand comment to the guy in the booth, like, "Oh, what's up? Well, what's up? Am I saying blah blah blah? Am I too edgy? I forget what I said exactly." And then I was like, "Oh shit! I
You're
totally
like,
wrapped it too
I
much.
unplugged the mic.
Yeah, what a dumb move. What a terrible move." So yeah, so it was like that was the first time that I got up there. And Pete Holmes was such a cool guy, such a real positive dude. We were in an improv class together, and yeah, I know that there's a lot of controversy out there when it comes to like rigging elections and stuff. But let's just say that to get up at Gut Bucket, you had to put your name in a hat, and I'm going to come out and say it, Pete Holmes. Pete Holmes rigged it so that I would definitely get up and be able to do 3 minutes of stand up. So, yeah, who knows if that didn't happen? Maybe we would be here a few more days into September or something like that. Like this particular date wouldn't happen. It would be a little further up.
So, you were watching George Carlin, you were having this kind of fantasy that you were going to be a stand-up comedian. Um, what was your attraction to stand-up comedy? Was it being able to speak your voice, speak your truth, be authentic, make a political message? Because George Carlin is a quite, interesting stand-up. I mean, obviously he's considered one of the, original gods of comedy, but what attracted you specifically to the art of stand-up?
Well, I think I was always a funny kid, and would always like make my friends laugh and whatnot. And I think growing up like in the 80s and 90s, stand-up comedy was just all over the place, on TV, whether it was HBO specials, being growing up watching like Carlin and Def Comedy Jam, and uh, yeah, even like in the late '80s, uh, when Andrew Dice Clay was really big, uh, me and my younger brothers, we would watch his stuff, and my two younger brothers in particular, they're twins. They don't look alike, but they're fraternal twins. Uh, and just imagine like these 5 or 6 year old kids repeating Andrew Dice Clay jokes, word for word, all the nursery rhymes and stuff, and getting a laugh out of
Lou,
adults.
your parents were pretty socially liberal.
Yeah, man,
I
like
don't
we
think
had,
I would have been allowed. I don't think I was allowed to watch any of that at that age.
yeah, I'm thinking about like, well, we had, those
I'm
were the
on
time.
5 or 6.
Yeah, I mean, I'm born. I was born in '82, so I think Andrew Dice Clay made like his debut on like Danger, like Rodney Dangerfield had a program in like '87.
So I'm just
So
going to clarify really quick for the audience because my
mhm.
podcast is not a comedy podcast. It's actually just out of the box thinkers. So for
Okay,
those of you who don't know, Andrew Dice Clay is a famous comedian. And in the 80s, he was known as a famous blue comedian. So he was quite dirty.
yeah,
So that's kind of why I'm like, oh, Lou,
no, it's
raunchy.
it's
He was
it
considered quite raunchy.
it's insane. Like when I look back at the stuff that I was exposed to as a kid, and a lot of it, because of illegal cable, so like
Okay.
when you have an illegal cable box, at the time, it's like you're able to see all this wild stuff. Um, and yeah, so I think that, that definitely has an impact on someone, growing up, for sure.
Yeah. So you grew up in the world of Dice Clay, George Carlin, again, for
Eddie
those,
Murphy,
Eddie
yeah,
Murphy.
Eddie.
Yeah. So again, for those who don't know who we're talking about, because actually, Lou, I was one of those people who didn't know what we were talking about. I was not a comedy fan growing up, as I was very censored. My parents were very, very strict. So I didn't watch any of that stuff growing up. Um, these are comedians that were just saying pretty much, Eddie Murphy's comedy special was called Raw. So I'm sure the
Right.
listeners and watchers can assume what that was about if you haven't seen it. And, George Carlin was a truth speaker. He has this famous dirty words where he kind of like breaks the federal, the FCC or whatever. So these are very outspoken comics. Andrew Dice Clay was considered very blue, very outrageous. So that's what you grew up with. And I think, even though I did not grow up with that, even though we're similar in age, I think that is what comedy should be about, is expressing yourself, expressing your truth without censorship and freedom of speech. And even if someone doesn't agree, because most people probably didn't agree with what George Carlin was saying. It was really radical at the time.
Yeah, and I think too, I think there's so many different things that you can get out of comedy, and depending on what kind of comedians you want to see too. And I was really fortunate to grow up at a time where, like I said, like there was stand up everywhere. We also had just amazing sketch comedy everywhere too. Obviously there was Saturday Night Live, but then there was the Kids in the Hall, in Living Color. um Mad TV was
The
pretty
heyday.
good. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
pretty good. And it's like everywhere you look, there was comedy. There was really interesting things happening, and you were able to have really raw blue comics, and you were also able to have people who were doing more observational humor, and there was a place for everything, no matter what you wanted. And I find that with the comedy that I do, I don't know, it gives me an opportunity to be a little naughty, you know, to be even a little dangerous. Like I'm not a thrill seeker. I don't go skydiving. I don't ride a motorcycle. My hair is really long now, and maybe I can actually put it in a ponytail. So maybe I'm going to reach that stage where I re-pierce my ear, and I wear a ponytail and all that. But it's like where I really have my adventurous streak is with
It's on
what I
stage.
it's yeah, it's on
Yeah.
stage, and also what kind of what I write and what I produce in the realm of sketch comedy and commentary. And yeah, I mean that's where I have like my most fun. The idea of getting up in front of a room full of people and delivering a joke that you may have been doing for years, and for them it's the first time that they hear it, and they laugh like it's the freaking first time that they hear it. I mean, that is such a cool, experience.
It is. And just so you know, I think I told you this last time I saw you, but I just watched the George Carlin documentary on HBO, and you do very creepily look like a young George Carlin.
I know I kind of look like George.
You're starting to morph into him, so we'll see.
my my
Okay.
my back is kind of cool. Oh, this is me, George Cohen. Yeah.
Well, if I ever have a sketch where I need to cast a George Carlin, you can play the young George Carlin.
Thank you. Thank you. I say that I want to be George Carlin with muscles. That's what I want to be, and which I got to get back into shape because I've let myself go a little bit.
So your book just came out this year. It's called
Yeah.
That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. And it's kind of a reaction to this offensive culture that is kind of the opposite of what you grew up with and what I grew up with. And I just want you to talk a little bit more about that, because maybe some people don't really know what's going on with freedom of speech and with censorship. And I also want to discuss my own experiences, which we've talked about offline before.
Yeah. I had an opportunity in writing a book uh to look back on like 20 years of doing comedy, which is just kind of insane. And it's like, if I didn't stop to look back, it's like I'd wake up one day and be like, wait a minute, how long have I been doing comedy? This doesn't make any sense. And a big reason, what sort of was the catalyst for this book was a piece that I wrote for the Wall Street Journal at the end of 2020, where I was writing in response to an academic paper that was done, basically a study on the growth of right wing echo chambers on YouTube.
Okay.
And it's like this is I'm like, whoa, this is an academic study. You had people from like Harvard involved with this thing. And in the study, if you go all the way to the end of it, there's sort of a list of all these different YouTube channels and all these different categories. So there's like left and right and far left and far right. And when I looked at the far right section, uh, listed there was We the Internet TV, which was the program that I was the head writer and producer of for like 5 years, and I'm also like the face of it. So
You
you
were
know,
like, whoa.
yeah, it's like whoa,
You're
and
like, when did I get radicalized?
yeah, exactly. And a number of friends had shared it with me, and my friend Noam Dwarman, who owns the Comedy Cellar, he shared it with me, and he said, you got to do like a responses. You should make a video or something. And at first, I was like, it's kind of wacky, goofy, whatever. But
So
then
you
I
were
start,
cited in the academic study.
yeah,
Yeah,
the channel,
the
the
channel.
brand that I am, linked to forever.
Before
And
we move forward, do you feel that you're a far right comedian? I
no,
I don't think
no,
so.
no,
Yeah, okay.
no, and that's and we'll get to that, like, the whole, like, idea of the far
If you
right. And
identify with that, that's totally fine. But I just wanted to clarify that you
no,
do
no, no, I
not
definitely don't.
identify with the far right and you were shocked by the study.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very shocked. And what ended up getting me upset about it, and was like, whoa, I really do need to respond to this, was that I had just lost my job in October, and this study, I think I read it like in November. And uh my I'm married. We had our first baby at the time, and I just lost my job, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to be sending out my resume and trying to get gigs. And now, they're like, what have you been doing for 5 years? Well, I've been with We the Internet TV. Oh, the far right program,
Yeah.
We the Internet TV. And so that was something that was like, I have to respond to this, because the label far right, I don't know what it means, like, when you hear it, but when I hear it, I immediately think of, like, okay, you have like Ku Klux Klan, those idiots marching with tiki torches
You're
in
like, I'm
Charlottesville.
Latino.
Right. There might be some, far right, Latinos there. That, maybe like, Franco in Spain. I mean, he was a legit fascist. Um, but it's something where, a lot of these labels just become shorthand for whether or not you're a good person or worthy of being a,
Yeah.
person of,
There's a lot
losing your
of
personhood.
there's a lot of moral gesturing online. There's a lot of you know, that type of stuff. So just so you know, I have actually been part of something similar, not an academic study. I don't know if I communicated this story to you. I might have. We talked quite a bit, when we performed together last about the topic of your book and the related topics. But I did a podcast with a friend of mine who I love. And she had said some controversial things online. And so I was associated with her and became part of a cyber mob, and people were calling me out for all sorts of things. None of these people know me in person. None of these people know anything about my stand up. And they were finding things online that I had said years ago and taking it out of context. And I was also, I don't know if I was vilified as a far right, but I was vilified as um, basically an enemy to the Asian American community, which is ironic because the reason that I got into entertainment was to become a positive role model for Asian women. I volunteer with Boys and Girls Club. The list of things that I do for the community and within the Asian American community. My dad, who's passed away, was the editor of the Vietnamese newspaper in New Orleans. I mean, the list is very long and very the activism that I've done for the Asian American community is very long, and all of that was thrown out the window, and I was thrown under a cyber mob truck and run over multiple times for 4 days
Wow.
because of this one clip, and because a woke internet person who had a very large following, branded me as an enemy of the state,
What
basically.
what did so you were like far right adjacent or enemy adjacent. I think that's how they put it. How what did the person say, if you can repeat it,
So I
and
will repeat it. It's
this is you
very
quoting. You're
this is
quoting.
it's very innocent. It's very innocent. So the comedian friend that I did the podcast with is Esther Koo, and
Oh,
she
okay.
is quite hated in the Asian American community because she had a joke that Asian men have small penises. And it's a joke, and she's been vilified quite a bit for it. And I love Esther, and I'm not going to speak for her, but I do think she does antagonize the trolls a little bit online. And so that, inflames things. I don't have that viewpoint. I've had many Asian boyfriends in the past. I don't have any
With huge dicks and just
huge, massive.
meh.
Yeah, you can say anything on this podcast. I'll edit
Okay.
out anything that's inappropriate. But I've had many Asian boyfriends. I'm an advocate to the community. The clip that went viral was a 30-second clip called "How to Get an Asian Girlfriend." And it was a clip with me and her. And in the clip, we just joke that, you have to trim your toenails. That's the clip. That's it. And this Asian American male who is an alleged woke activist retweeted it and said, "This is exactly what's wrong, with our community," or whatever. And we both got thrown under the bus. Again, I think Esther antagonizes a little bit more. I have
Uh,
never said anything derogatory at all. They found an old tweet that I had tweeted 5 or 6 years ago, where I said, "Oh, my iPhone just auto corrected one of my sentences to the word chink. What's it trying to tell me?" And they said, "I'm the type of person that uses chink, and makes fun of it and makes light of it." And it just went on and on for days. And I was bullied and harassed severely to the point of depression. But, people don't care about that. It's like if you have said something that is quote unquote offensive, I think people will take it to that level now online. It's really scary.
yeah. Well. For one, I mean, I just have to say, if if like one of the worst things you can say about one's community is that they need to trim their toenails. It's like, man, you guys are doing something really well. Like, wow, you guys are killing it. That's amazing. Oh, something that I was wondering about is, when you hear like the Asian community, like this, it almost makes it seem like Asians are a monolith, and I know that percentage wise, it's a pretty small percentage of the population of the United States, But the idea that like somehow Vietnamese people and Koreans and Filipinos and Japanese and the Chinese all get along. Like that,
Exactly. Stop
they
Asian
just
hate among each other.
yeah, it's I don't know, it's so weird like when these, coalitions are built and I'm like, I'm not a historian, but the Chinese and Japanese have a really rough past with each other.
Yeah.
So the idea of like
So does
uh,
my
you know,
the Vietnamese. My
oh
dad's
yeah,
home was actually occupied by Japanese soldiers during World War II, and people in my family were tortured. So
wow.
yeah, it's a pretty deep history, but it just was sad. It was sad that something we said was taken so out of context, and it was sad that my association with someone who says something controversial meant I was the controversial person. Because anyone who knows me in real life and comedians that know me know that I'm pretty like tame and not that controversial as a comedian or as an online personality. And Esther is she's very I would say provocative, but
Mhm.
I have friends that are provocative. That doesn't mean I agree with them or that I am them or an extension of them. I have relatives that have different political viewpoints as me. I always got really upset when people would say, well, Ivanka Trump needs to disown her dad. I'm like, that's her dad. Like,
You're right.
my parents had completely different political views as me. I'm not going to disown them. I have to live with them for the rest of my life. So I think people are a bit extreme, but I want to talk about your book because it's so important,
Sure,
and
sure.
what you're doing is so important, and the study and the book, and talking about what's going on with people getting offended and taking things too far. I really want to talk about that, and a little bit, maybe give people a little sample. You don't have to read from it, but just talk more about the content of it for the listeners and viewers.
Sure, sure. Well, for one, sort of like what you're describing, people kind of questioning you or going after you for the relationships that you have and that you maintain. It's very much like kind of like a cult like way of doing things, where the
Yeah.
idea is like, oh, you have to separate yourself from your father, because he or he thinks terrible things, or you have to separate yourself from from these friends that you've had. And I think that's one of the big things about cancel culture is you have a bunch of, you know, horrible people who will never treat you right or never treat you well, telling you to disown people who have treated you well and who you love. And it seems like, when I call it, kind of like cult like behavior, it's like, well, if they can separate you from the people that you care about, well, then, it's a lot easier to own you in different ways, to isolate you. Um,
And a
so
lot of
no,
comedians have fallen into this.
thing,
Oh,
but I
right.
remember, what was it? Shortly after Dave Chappelle's The Closer, Oswald did like I guess a stop. He did a
I'm not going to work with him or something, right?
yeah, he did a spot at Dave Chappelle's show and posted a picture of it. Like, I've known this guy for decades. And then I guess he got a lot of backlash. So then he followed that up with, I remember the picture. It's like it's like Patton Oswalt backstage, with, the stereotypical mirror backstage with like the light bulbs going all around the sides, and him like with a pad and a pen and writing this thing about Dave Chappelle, like basically, kind of, taking it to his so-called friend. And he said something along the lines of, I disagree with Dave that, I want to see a world where trans people are safe. And I was like, holy shit. The idea that you're going to say that Dave Chappelle wants a world where trans people aren't safe. Like, not only are you like you're a terrible human being just for saying that, but you're supposed to be a friend, this guy that you've known for all this long, for these years. And you see behavior like that, and it's just sickening on a, on a, I don't know, just on a human level. It's like to do that to a friend. But
Yeah, I've seen that happen. There, as you know, there's been multiple comedy controversies over the years, and I've seen people get accused of things,
yeah,
and their friends just, drop them like flies. Like, oh, I don't know, I don't associate with him, I don't talk to this person, or I don't talk to her. Instead of being like, no, I know this person, I've known them for 15 years, they would never do this, or this is
right.
being taken out of context, because there's such a fear that you will be rolled over by the media mob. And let me tell you, Lou, I have been misquoted on multiple articles of no consequence. So not even
Mm,
controversial articles, just like me talking to a reporter or talking to someone about something in comedy, again, nothing of consequence, and been severely misquoted. So the ability to take some, and not from a vicious or mean spirited way, just misquoted. Maybe they heard me wrong, or they wrote it down wrong, or they forgot, whatever. And, or maybe they're exaggerating for the story. I don't know. In 3 or 4 different articles, I've done one for Christian Science Monitor, one for um, a local newspaper, completely misquoted.
mm,
And so it's very easy to take things out of context. And when you add on to that a system that is incentivizing clickbait,
right.
it's very easy to take something out of context. So I really don't like this cancel culture and this throwing people under the bus, because you're ruining a real person's life just to
Yeah.
like have someone click on your article.
The the one thing that I do like about cancel culture is what I describe as the career murder suicides,
Okay.
where 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 somebody either joins a mob or like whips up a mob to get somebody canceled, and then when they do that, people start digging through like their old posts and then find a bunch of stuff, and then they end up getting canceled, which is I forget I forget the comedians' names, but it's happened a few times, like out in the public, and it's almost like within days, you know. And it's
I actually
I
I
there's
I do
something there.
remember that happening recently to someone who I think called out someone who was a sexual assault person, and then they found tweets of them being inappropriate or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like, I'm not the type of person who is like, ooh, I'm gonna keep this email that I have because one day I might be able to use it against this person. But it's just funny to see people out in the open, virtue signaling and talking like they're like, they've been on the right side of history forever. And it's like, wait a minute, I remember you I remember you at my mic at the open mic that I used to run, like saying the N-word, in a joke. And you're a white dude, like
Yeah.
and that
That
now here
happened
you are.
that's
So
happened a lot with the Black Lives Matter movement. So the rise of Black Lives Matter, all of a sudden people that I've known for years who were never advocates of the Black community, were never advocates of any of this, they're posting, a fist and like
right.
solidarity, and all of a sudden hashtag BLM. I'm like, yeah, like just like you said, I'm like, I think I've heard you say the N-word. I think I've heard you say stuff. I remember doing a show with you. There's one comedian who I shall not badmouth, but I did a gig with her in a Black community, Black room. And, she made several comments to me behind the scenes about, oh, do you know where you are? And about crime, and associating Black people with crime. And asked me to walk her to her car. And now I see her regularly on, Young Turks and other things, talking about
Ooh.
unfair discrimination against Black people. And I'm like, wait a minute, weren't you saying like super racist stuff like 5 years ago?
One of the most amazing things that happened during the pandemic, and it almost made it into my book. In the book, I have a chapter called "Pandemic Daddy," where I talk about becoming a dad, and sort of.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you twice. I'm a daddy twice.
You're very
Um,
virile.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, it works. That's the thing. Like guys don't know if what what they have works until they find the right gal or the wrong gal. I guess I happen to find the right one. But during the pandemic, just to make the story shorter, it didn't make it into the book, but there was a neighbor. We lived in a building, and this white neighbor was I guess coming home, and he attacked a another neighbor on the street.
Oh
The other
wow.
neighbor on the street was not wearing a mask, on a bicycle in the bike lane in the street, and this guy was so upset about it that he attacked him. Now, uh, the attacker was white, the victim was black, right? And it was a big big hullabaloo and all that. And then I went, you know what, I want to go check out the attacker's Facebook page. And wouldn't you know, all on the wall, it's all about I need I have white privilege. I need to do better. I need to be an ally. Black Lives Matter and all that. And I'm wondering, wait, did that, wait, this stuff happened. He posted this stuff before he attacked a black guy on the street for the crime of
Yeah.
not wearing a mask. Not only a black man, a guy who lives in the neighborhood with a wife and a kid and all that. And it's just like, man, the the person you are online, or you want the world to see, is so much different from the person that you actually are. And I guess something, we could probably, talk about, like, when it comes to comedy is, you know, uh, I'm really trying to go for me saying what's on my mind and what my thoughts are, and
Yeah.
and
Being
and
authentic.
being authentic, and of course, that might change with audiences and all that. Like, maybe I'm not going to do this material for this audience; they might not get it. Um, but I think that's something that's so important to me. So when I see a lot of people who aren't being their authentic selves, um, in a way, a part of me, might feel bad for them. It's like, oh man, it sucks that you're trying to play this game. And what I found is, like, uh, if I'm playing this game, it's like there's only, so many rounds I can do before I just, like, oh come on, I just gotta be myself. It's
Exactly.
like,
It's
oh, I
too
can't do this.
exhausting to like put on a mask. No pun intended, not
Right.
a COVID mask, a metaphorical mask,
Right.
a spiritual mask. Um, so let's talk about the vibe. So your book, obviously by the name, do you feel that there's a tide turning or a shift in audiences or shift in the general, I guess, um, society where people are getting a little more offended, or there's a culture of like this over cancel over wokeness? I know I felt a shift, but I'd like to hear your perspective.
um Yeah, I mean, I mean, I wonder how much of it has to do with me living so much of my life online, so it's sort of, there's a bubble that I'm kind of in,
A
like,
far right bubble.
yeah, my far right bubble. It
Echo
it's
chamber
it is
is
it
what Yale
is
called it.
it is so warm in here because of all the burning crosses. They're just burning, just 24/7. But yeah, I wonder how much of it is because of, if you're on Twitter, if you're still on Facebook, um, if that's what I'm seeing, just because of those are the populations there. Um, but the subtitle of my book is On the Death and Rebirth of Comedy.
Ooh,
So it's
are
a
we at the
book.
rebirth part?
I think so. Yeah, I know. I really do. I think there's a lot of hope there, and I think a big reason why is kind of like what we're doing right now. I mean, you and I have the technology to be able to communicate, um, anytime that we want, and blast our stuff out into the universe. And there are audiences out there who want that, and they want to support, our voices. And I think that is something that is really going to save us. I think building those relationships between uh the comedian or the artist and their audience, and making it clear, like, we need each other, like, we really need to be supporting each other. And I've been really fortunate to have an audience that is so supportive. And you and I, we first performed together in Las Vegas at Freedom Fest, and it's like, oh, those are my people, and they didn't ask for anything to be cut or edited, or not to, um, for you not to be who you really are. And I think that's so important.
I think you're right. I think there is an undercurrent, but I also think there is an overcurrent, which I hope ends very soon because I've been doing stand-up comedy for 18 years. I've never in the history of my career been considered an edgy or offensive comedian, and I
Mm.
have in the past 2 to 3 years, which is really scary. I've never been awed at. I've never had people, when you do a joke and people go, "Oh," I've never had that happen, and I have had that happen in the past few years. I've had people say that I am offensive, which I've never had in
Wow.
18 years of doing stand up. Um, I'm pretty, I'm not a Bill Burr, I'm not a Dave Chappelle. I do have a couple edgy jokes, but I'm pretty safe, I would say. I mean, I do have dirty material, which um, a lot of comedians do. I'm not a clean comedian by any stretch of the imagination, but I have been considered offensive in the last few years by audiences, and that's been something that was really shocking for me.
Is that yeah, and then how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of a badass now? Or is
I
it is
don't. So I'm a
no?
people pleaser. I like to make people, I do stand up to make people laugh and bring joy to their
Right.
lives. I mean, I hate to sound like, have you ever seen
No,
the
like,
movie Trolls where like the Poppy, the super positive troll?
yeah, no, but I got to stop you there. I think that's awesome. You know,
Oh,
'cause
okay.
no, I really do think that's awesome because I think um and I go into this like in my book a little bit, you know. I think that's something that we have we have really forgotten about is the idea of bringing laughter and joy to people's lives. I think I think there's been so much political politicalization of comedy, and you know, at some point you turn around and you're like, wait a minute, someone just wrote like a 1,200 word think piece on, you know, on somebody's,
On dick jokes.
yeah, on someone's you know, dick jokes, or uh, and it's like, wait a minute, where did we start? Oh, it started with a comedian getting up on stage and in front of a crowd, or you know, putting something out online because they thought it would be funny.
Yeah.
And you know, like the initial desire is to elicit that, you know, out of an audience. And I think that's something that it's really important to get back, you know, to get back
Yeah.
to find the
I'm not here
joy in
to
that.
offend anyone. I'm not here to piss people off. I'm here to bring people together and make them laugh and forget about their problems. And I went through a huge transformation, Lou, because I used to do comedy for myself. So I used to do it for super selfish reasons. Have you ever heard the phrase comedians were either touched too much or too little?
No, I like that though.
So I was touched too little. So I did it for attention and I was really attached to that. And if I had a bad set, I'd be really depressed. And if I had a great set, then I'd be really happy. So it was very conditional and very, very unhealthy and toxic. And I worked on healing myself. I went to therapy and I fixed all of that. And so now I go up and I just have a great time and I just want to make people laugh and there's no pressure. And if I have a bad set, it's okay. I mean, obviously it doesn't feel great, but it's okay. And if I have a great set, then that's great too. But I really just want to make people laugh. So for me, to answer your question, for me, it's been really upsetting to be considered offensive
Mm,
or to have people awe or to have people assume malintent. I did a
right.
joke recently at a show, literally a week ago. I did a joke at a show, and I live in a majority Mexican neighborhood in Los Angeles, and I have a lot of Hispanic material because I'm an Asian girl living in a majority Mexican neighborhood. And so I did some jokes about Mexican people, which in normally Mexican people and other Hispanics love my material and get along with it. And somebody took it as malintent that I was making, like she took one of the audience members took it as I was punching down, kind of. And so I said the joke and everyone laughed. And then this woman in the audience goes, wrong audience, honey. And
Meanwhile,
because
everybody was laughing.
well, everyone was laughing. But because she said that, and I think people are very self-conscious of being
Mm,
woke and being accepting of all, the people around her who were all Hispanic kind of stopped laughing. Like they were like, oh, maybe we're supposed to be offended by this.
oh,
And the rest of my set, they kind of looked uncomfortable during my set. And I mean, I've started in the East LA comedy scene. I've been doing all Hispanic rooms most of my career and having a very positive response. And that was the first time I think in my career that that's happened. It was very upsetting. And because she took what I was saying as punching down and not that I'm an Asian girl in within the Hispanic community. And I love it. Usually it's considered endearing. I make fun of it. I say, I'm Chinita Loca and I have all sorts of stuff. And the woman, because she took it as offensive, because, that's what people that get offended do. And she made that comment very loudly and it affected the audience that was sitting around her. And it was very upsetting. So I think that we do as a society need to like loosen up. And I hope that this rebirth that you're talking about is on the way because I have been considered offensive the past few years in some crowds and I don't like it.
mm.
I'm not an offensive person.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so wild. Just the you know, the impact that like that one person had on the atmosphere
Yeah.
of the crowd. And then also like the, with the issue of like punching up versus punching down. uh I mean, and now I'm just imagining like you having to like explain like, no, actually, like I'm Vietnamese. And if you want to talk about the hierarchy or whatever this is, like, you guys have a country called Mexico. And, we had to leave our country of Vietnam, or then I think there's material there for, I guess, like like another think piece. Like, how is it that, uh, you know, uh, punching down Mexicanas versus, Vietnamese. Um, but yeah, it's just so goofy, like trying to do like that, can I get that formula,
But
like,
just the intent that the woman would think that um I was someone who would punch down. It really, I think, shows the mood of the country. And
yeah,
like I said, I have a joke about being a bad driver. I know that's a little hacky, but I have had quite a few car accidents, and I
you
have
are
to make
actually a bad driver, which is yeah,
I
that's
have to
hilarious. And
make
you're like,
fun of it. I have to
yeah,
make fun of it. I'm Asian. I'm not trying to be a hack. I know it's a hacky stereotype, but I have to make fun of it because I'm Asian and I'm a bad driver. And again, that material has never gotten any oohs and ahs in the past. And recently I've had people, well, you can't talk about that. I've had people come up to me after, you can't talk about that. I'm like, well, I am Asian and I am a bad driver. Why am I not allowed to talk about that? Well, that's offensive. That's a stereotype. Well, it's not a stereotype because I'm talking about myself and it's true for
right.
me. Right. And I've been told I cannot talk about that because it's offensive to Asians. And so
Oh, I mean, you should say no. I'm a bad driver, not because I'm Asian, but because I'm a woman. Like that's, just I don't. It's so wild. Like, man, I can't imagine being the type of like joke police,
yeah.
who would, get offended. Is it a generational thing? Like, do you notice it? Is it like younger people who are,
I
getting
think so.
offended?
So younger people I've noticed aren't getting offended, but they don't really. I don't know. So this might be not part of woke culture, but might be part of the internet culture, which someone has told me because a lot of younger people have spent their life online, and so they don't know how to interact. Is I've had a lot of people that don't know how or when to laugh, and I've come up to them after the show and talked to them, and they find me funny. But it's like they're so used to watching it on their phone or watching Netflix that it's like they don't know at a live comedy show literally how to interact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, but it's almost like a component of like the kids who've grown up watching pornography, not knowing like what to do when an actual real human being is
Yeah.
in front of them. Like,
Yeah. So I think that is I haven't yeah,
this
I haven't
porno is
had
offensive.
I haven't had that experience of people of younger people being offended. More so I've noticed they don't really know how or when to laugh at a
Wow.
live show, and so that's really bizarre. But I have noticed obviously I'm a person of color, but other people of color, minorities, seeming to be more on guard and more offended. And I think there's this fear since the Trump era that everyone's racist and everyone hates you all of a sudden. And I think that's just silly. I actually don't think America's a racist country. I think America's a diverse country. And when there's a lot of diversity, then there's conflict because there's different types of people. And I think that's a positive.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I had a a journalist on my podcast, the Lou Perez podcast, named David Harsanyi, and he has a book called Eurotrash, and it's great. Where I mean, he basically like kind of goes through just you know how crappy of a place Europe is, like as a continent when compared to the United States, and uh, it was shocking to hear him talk about uh, the amount of racism in Europe. I
Yeah.
mean, the stuff that happens at soccer games is just insane. Like people, throwing bananas at the African players and stuff like stuff that just would not fly here. Um, and yeah, I mean, my dad's from uh, from Argentina. He's a butcher. I grew up in Queens. We have a butcher shop, a family butcher shop in Spanish Harlem, and it's just like, uh, I think me, like, I'm very fortunate to have grown up with just so many different kinds of people, where I know good people and bad people of every, ethnicity and race and all that. And maybe that's made it easier for me to, judge people, as individuals, like on their characters, you know. So
Remember, Martin Luther King never said don't judge people. He said don't judge them by the color of their skin. He
right.
said judge them by the content of their character. He said it's okay to judge people.
Right, exactly. Man,
All right. Well, we are going to wrap up.
cool.
Did you want to say anything else about your book? How can people get it? How can people find out more about Lou Perez?
I think Martin Luther King would want everybody to read my book. You gotta read this book. Read it twice. Yeah. Well, I would say that, I think, you and I, performing live, we both know what it's like to step onto a stage and a room is quiet, and you speak into the microphone and you make that room go from quiet to laughing. And it's a pretty cool feeling. And
It's
having
like
the
mind
opportunity.
control.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, oh, where do I get this power from? And it's something that I'm really grateful that I've been able to do, and that I continue to do that. And I really want to do that with my book as well. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in here that people will enjoy, and I hope they pick it up, and it
Amazon
entertains them
or
and makes them. Yeah, you can get on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. They can go to the Simon and Schuster website, and it's Lou
is that your
Perez.
publisher?
Yeah, yeah. Lou Perez, That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, on the death and rebirth of comedy.
Well, I certainly hope we're in the rebirth period, because the last few years of really weird people getting offended by me is just not cool. And we're here. Most comedians are not here to offend and shock. Most comedians are here to make you laugh and enjoy and chuckle. And some of us are here to get a little attention once in a while. So that's all we really care about.
Huh.
But I hope that people support your book. And if you're watching this on YouTube, or Rockfin, I will have all of Lou's social media links below, in the box below, so you can check him out and follow him and support him as well if you choose to buy the book or not. And then also, if you're listening, do not crash your car. Wait until you're safely pulled over to check out the links as well on the website. I am on Twitter at Funny Rosie. This has been Out of the Box Podcast with Rosie Tran. Lou, your social medias, in case people are listening and want to crash their car.
Yeah, at the Lou Perez.
Awesome.
Everywhere.
At Lou Perez. And I have to say, Lou, I have only talked to you in person, and over audio equipment, your voice is very, very soothing and calm. And I do not feel a far right nationalist KKK vibe at all.
That's how I get all the far right ideas inside you. That's how I get all the white supremacy inside.
Even though you're not white, really.
Yeah, I in my book I talk about the
your white light.
Me. White light. Yeah, that's right.
You're or mocha. You're mocha latte.
Maybe I think I'm more latte. I think there's a lot more milk going on in the mocha.
All right, Lou, thank you so much, guys. This has been Out of the Box Podcast with Rosie Tran. Check us out online at outoftheboxpodcast.com. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere you find your podcasts. Check us out on Rockfin. If you're on Rockfin, click on the subscribe, and you can get access to all of my special content and choose me as your subscriber person. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.